for me, it doesn't. Like the clear messaging point, does that tell the whole story?
The point that I'd like to relay here is with the Labour Party, specifically Corbyn, is almost like the bloody nose analogy. So they had a fudge policy. They didn't do well in the EU elections. That should have been a wake up call. Then we had dear old Jo Swinson marching on like she was going to become the Prime Minister of Great Britain, assuming the position that the Labour Party should have assumed. The bloody nose analogies is going on, and then in the TV debates, Jeremy Corbyn was asked, what is your Brexit position? The bloody nose is going more and more and more, and ultimately what we have is casualty. We have a Labour leader who essentially said, hey guys, I'm going to go to Brussels, I'm going to negotiate a Brexit deal that we're going to then put back to the people for you to decide. Where is the conviction in any of the process?
Right.
Is they don't back themselves to get a good deal, and how can the country back someone to lead the nation and say, oh, it's your responsibility? That is a complete disaster.
Okay, so in answer to the question, so you're actually disagreeing with Umar. It's not actually because Labour was indecisive. It was because its Brexit policy was nonsensical, right? How can you go and ask to negotiate a deal and then come back to the country and not be able to say whether you actually support the deal or not?
But again, it's nonsensical and it's indecisive at the fact that he's unable to say clearly that he believes in the deal itself.
Well, he said it'd be neutral, right?
I think it's a difficult one in that actually it was much more than just Corbyn. You know, the Labour Party is an organisation that has to listen to its members, and in that situation you had members wanting different things, MPs wanting different things, and I think it's in the way we say that Brexit impacted each and every single political party, it definitely impacted the Labour Party in the same way. You know, some MPs would argue actually that we should be finding a deal and we should be negotiating that. Some MPs will be arguing that we should be looking for a second referendum. I think the mistake that the Labour Party made was ultimately we didn't understand the mood of the country leaving the European Union and when that vote happened.
Absolutely.
We failed to understand how people felt, and I still don't think that we grasped that in any way, shape or form. That feeling of wanting to vote out. You hear a lot of people say, people made a mistake. You hear a lot of people say, or especially the Labour Party people say, people made a mistake, people didn't know what they were voting for. Irrespective of that, I think we haven't gone on that journey of understanding. So the reason for this confusion in the Labour Party is because we assumed people's position. We assumed what some people wanted, and there was this, like you said, fudge of policy where we had different competing interests within the Labour Party, and therefore we couldn't give an exact position. I mean, ultimately what the Conservatives did, they didn't have to listen to their membership, really. It was about leaving, taking that approach of leaving, this is what we're going to do, you've spoken up for the country. And that is an easier thing to put down. And ultimately, our position was much more harder to make, and that was a much more difficult decision to make, because it doesn't just paint the picture of leaving. It paints the picture of, well, what should we do? How should our relationship be with the Labour Party? And as an opposition party, I think that's a much more difficult case to make to the country.
I agree.
Can I just add again, I want to use the bloody nose analogy again to illustrate a few more points. So I use the bloody nose analogy to explain Labour's downfall. I'll use that same analogy to explain the Conservative Party. If we look at back in during David Cameron's premiership, the one thorn in his step was he was trying to renegotiate UK's position with the EU. That was influenced by the fact that we had dear old Farage, UKIP. So the bloody nose analogy is you have UKIP jabbing, trying to make the Conservative Party leak in terms of the bloody nose. Cameron then decides, let me jab back with a referendum. The referendum brought Brexit. And then we have good old Boris Johnson, who's jabbing him, the Brexit party. So what did he feel? So they're jabbing, looking for blood, and he basically said, look, we're going to put the country first, we're going to get Brexit done, and he continuously hammered the message home. So they jabbed, all the way to an 80-seat majority. That is the difference here. It is clinical politics.
Oh, sorry, so hold on. What we're doing, sorry, we find Ade every £1 every time he uses that word, because he can't. There's no other word you can use to describe politics at the moment. But Amal, no, seriously, that's £1 to the Club Char campaign. We're coming back to that.
I think listening to you guys talk about it, I think you guys still don't understand. Like, from somebody that voted Conservative, will vote Conservative again, somebody that voted for Leave, and if we were to have the referendum tomorrow, I would vote for Leave again with more of my chest. You guys, it's not sounding like you guys are understanding at all. The reason why people like myself voted for Conservative and voted to Leave is, number one, Jeremy Corbyn, regardless of your policy, the fact that you guys were indecisive on the Brexit policy is a microcosm of the fact that your leader you had a poor leader. It shows that your leader is a terrible one. At the end of the day, you're not trying to lead a political party, you're trying to lead a country, and the country voted in a certain way. So for the Labour Party to consistently come around and tell people that we didn't know what we voted for, we didn't do this, when we voted for Brexit we were promised lies, this and the other. For me, and for people that I know, it's very, very insulting, and it makes me less likely to ever vote for the Labour Party.
So did dear Boris not lie? So did dear Boris with these the 300? Is it the 350 million? The NHS on the bus? Was that not a lie?
That's not the point I'm trying to make. Me personally, I don't like Boris Johnson. I think Boris Johnson lied. But to say that the Leave campaign lied, again, to me, my mind is boggled, because George Osborne said time without number that if we voted to leave the EU, we would be leaving the single market. Project Fear told us time without number that when we leave the European Union, heaven will fall and the sky will bleed red.
And dear Boris inflated some numbers.
That's not... I don't argue that. Again, I think Boris Johnson is a liar. But
So you vote for a liar to lead your country?
I would rather vote for a liar than somebody who supports Hamas and Hezbollah, yes.
And what about the person that refers to Muslim women as letterboxes? Do you also vote for that person?
I also believe Jeremy Corbyn to be a liar.
Okay, Amara, but this is the question, right? So you can say these are the reasons why people voted for Brexit, but the bigger question is
we voted for the Conservative Party.
Right.
They were the only party that were willing to respect the democratic
Amara,
vote
can I
of
ask you a question quickly? How do you feel to vote for a beloved man, dear old Boris, that once upon a time he said emotional women are bubbling blondes, collapsing with emotions, or just pat her on her bum and send her on her way home?
he really said that?
Yeah. How do you feel voting for our beloved Prime Minister?
The same
who
way,
says that about women?
The same way people have the chest to vote for an anti-Semite. Like, it is what at the end of the day, with the last election.
So as a woman, do you feel comfortable for someone to say just pat her on her bum and send her on her way home?
As a black person, do you feel comfortable voting for somebody that allows racism in any form to go on in his party? I have said this before and I'll say it again.
Has that been found that Jeremy Corbyn has allowed anti-Semitism in his party?
I'll say this before and I'll say it again. At the very last election, we were not voting. I didn't vote for who I thought was the best candidate because realistically, none of them were good. None of the options were good. But on paper, I was going to vote for somebody that would honour the democratic vote of the people. I was also going to vote for somebody who I felt to be more competent than the others. And unfortunately, Jeremy Corbyn was not that man.
I think